Hey everyone, so Title Update 2 just came out and with it came a lot of new armor and weapons. We're gonna take a look at it today and see if anything changes the meta. So first off, we have two new weapons. We're gonna start with the Seregios bow. And at first glance, it's not very good. It has no element and pretty low roll, although it does have good affinity and it has close range coatings, which are the best damage coatings. However, the real appeal of this bow is the skill Blade Scale Loading. What this skill does is after a perfect dodge, you gain 3 spatial coatings. Those coatings come on top of your regular coatings, so technically if you dodge every 3 shots, you'd never have to reload your coatings. But that's not really realistic or efficient. Just be mindful of one thing, as long as you have any special coating equipped, additional perfect dodges will not give you any. So if you want to refresh your special coatings, you need to use all of them. The real benefit of these special coatings is that they add 25% to your total damage. It is very unusual for wilds to have a skill that buffs your total damage, so that buff is quite impressive. Because of this, Seregios bow is a very good option for low elemental matchup. So for example, it is now the best bow for Arcveld. When it comes to other low elemental matchups like Mizutsune, it can be good, but you need to make sure that you have pretty decent uptime on blade scale coatings. One more thing, this bow will perform a lot better in solo, especially if you don't take your cat, because in multiplayer, since you share the aggro with 3 other players, your uptime on blade scale coatings will be a lot lower. And this bow lives and dies by the uptime of the special coatings. Okay, so let's move on to the Lagiacrus bow. And once again, this bow is also pretty good. It has pretty good roll for an elemental bow at 220. It has a base of 250 elements, and it has close range coatings, which is very important. It also has a new skill called Convert Thunder Resistance. What this skill does is it takes 40% of your thunder resistance and adds it as thunder attack. So for example, if you have 10 thunder resistance, 40% of that will be 4. But as you know, the stat page is lying to you, so you have to multiply that by 10, so that would be 40 additional thunder elements. This is now the best new thunder bow, and that's the bow you want to use for matchups like Chatkabra, Balahara, and most importantly Seregios and Ulthduna. So before we take a look at the builds, here is a summary of all the relevant bows. So like I just said, there is Seregios mostly for Arcveld, and we have Lagiacrus bow for all the thunder matchups. We have the Guardian Arcveld bow for Dragon. We have the Blangonga bow mostly for Xuwu. And then for fire and water, we have the Arthian bows. Okay, so let's take a look at the new armor sets now. And we're gonna start with the Seregios armor set. The 2-piece set bonus is gonna extend the duration of Adrenaline Rush from 30 seconds to 45 seconds. And it's gonna allow you to extend the duration once per activation by 15 seconds for a total of 1 minute. The 4-piece set bonus does the same thing, except once you extend the bonus, you also get a 5% base roll damage bonus. 5% base roll on a 4-piece set bonus, especially when it has low uptime, is not great at all, so we're gonna completely ignore the set bonus. Okay, so let's move on to the Lagiacrus set bonus called Azure Bolt. Azure Bolt does 2 things. The first thing is, when you deal some damage, you will get a 15% affinity bonus for 20 seconds. Once the 20 seconds is over, you have a long cooldown of 30 seconds, and once the cooldown is over, you can start proccing the skill again. So because of the 30 seconds cooldown, the uptime of the skill is pretty low, so in a vacuum, the set bonus is not amazing. However, because the individual pieces of the Lagiacrus armor are pretty good for bow, we're still gonna use them, and this set bonus will come as a nice side effect. The second part of the set bonus is once you activate the affinity bonus, so every 50 or 60 seconds, you also get a burst of thunder damage. The damage is not amazing. With 2-piece set bonus, it's gonna be around 50 damage, and it's gonna be every 50 or 60 seconds, so it's almost completely irrelevant. The 4-piece set bonus does the same thing, except the affinity bonus lasts 30 seconds instead of 20 seconds, so the uptime is a little higher. And the burst of thunder damage will do more damage than the 2-piece set bonus. Okay, we have a lot of builds to cover today, so I'm gonna get right to it. The first build we're gonna talk about is the default basic DPS set. As you can see, this build uses 2-piece Gormagala and 2-piece Lagiacrus. This build can be used with any bow that I showed previously, and it will work in any situation. is basically your default build. It does about 2% more DPS than the old meta builds from the last title update. The only drawback of this build is, as you can see, it has Constitution 2, so if you use this build, you will have to eat for black belt. If you don't want to farm for mushrooms and eat for black belt, there is a Constitution 5 variation of this build, and it only does approximately 2% less DPS. Now, this next build is going to be your Thunder specific build. If you remember earlier when we spoke about the Lagia Crossbow, it has a skill that increases its elemental attack the more thunder resistance you have. So this build is a variation of the Constitution 5 build that also has thunder resistance 3. Just to be clear, if you don't want to make a specific build for thunder, you don't have to. You can use the Lagia Crossbow with a normal DPS set, that's completely fine. But if you use this build for thunder, you will do just a little extra damage. I still got a couple more builds for you guys. The next one is the Guts build, and that's a more defensive build. If you haven't seen my last video, what Guts does is it prevents a one-shot once per life. So if you fight a tempered monster like Tempered Mizusune that can easily one-shot you, Guts can be pretty good to prevent one shot per life. In terms of damage, this build does the exact same damage as the Constitution 5 build. So if you're looking for a more comfort build or defensive build, you can choose between the Constitution 5 build or the Guts build. They're both pretty good. 80 Radar is coming back this week as I'm posting this video, so if you don't have his gear yet, now's the time to get it. Speaking of 80 Radar, we have a Latent Power build to talk about. I'm personally not a fan of Latent Power. The uptime management of this skill is annoying and it's a very unflexible skill. However, I cannot deny that it's pretty strong, and as long as you have an uptime of at least 40%, it has potentially more damage than the DPS build. So if you're okay with the drawbacks of Latent Power, this build is potentially one of the highest damage one on this video, but personally I never use this one. And finally, the last build I'm gonna show you is the Convert Element 3 build. This is specifically for dragon matchups, so like Zoshia and the Rathalos and Rathian. If you don't know what this skill does, I have a video specifically for this skill, so I would suggest that you check it out. And this build has not changed at all from the last IO update. Because I know I showed you a lot of builds in this video, here is on screen a summary of all 6 builds that I showed you in this video and the timestamp at which you can find them. If you have any questions in the comment on a specific build and why you would use one instead of another, you can leave that question in the comments and I'll try my best to answer every question. Okay, see you next time.